For the founders in the space with style and grace, I'm Brittany Antoinette, host of the Not So CEO talk show and founder of The Idea Girl. From work and wellness to bootstrapping and burnout, we cover all bases on building a brand, whether you're a seasoned vet or you're just getting started. Through guest interviews, water cooler combos, and office hours, we're paving way for a new era of Not So CEOs. So grab your notepad and tune in for unfiltered banter on branding, business, and bullshit. Muna is a startup expert, seasoned marketer, and founder of strategic advisory firm MKD. She started her career early at just 17 years old, and over the past 10 years has worked with Madewell, Warby Parker, Gucci, Topicals, Chill House, TikTok, and the WNBA, among others. She's extremely passionate about making business easier for underrepresented founders and now works with beauty, wellness, and tech startups to help them launch, scale, and exit with ease. She's also the executive director of Sad Girls Club, a global mental health organization providing cultural mental health resources for Gen Z and millennial women and girls of color. Since moving part-time to Paris in 2023, Muna also hosts La French Conversation, a meetup group for cool girls learning French in New York City. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. And this time around, I am with none other than Big Money Muna. I hope you know that's my new name for you.
Oh, I will call that into existence. Please.
Big Money Muna. That's her name. Do not wear it out. Muna, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I needed Muna to kind of gather everyone, including myself, on the importance of standing on a business strategy. So Muna, thank you for being here again.
Thank you. I am just glad to have a platform to go on my business rants. So I appreciate you
Yeah.
wholeheartedly.
Muna always is so humble. She's like, I'm on my soapbox, but I'm like, Muna, the difference between you and people that get on soapboxes is that we actually listen when you talk. So it's like your rants are just so insightful and they make you think like, wait, why didn't I do like this is so right. So thank you so much for being here again. Like I'm sure, please, ladies and gents, grab your notepads. I'm telling you right now. So I want to start off just asking a little bit about you. Tell us, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your educational background. And what's really interesting, that I feel like it's really interesting about your background, is the fact that you were formerly a chemistry major and you somehow intertwined that with business, which I feel is wild. So I just want to talk a bit about that in your background from Vanderbilt University.
Yeah, I can start from even before them because I will say, like, I'm a Southern girl through and through, or I guess technically like the Great Plains. But I was born in Oklahoma and spent most of my life there. And then my family moved to Tennessee. And then I went to school in Nashville at Vanderbilt. So that I feel like is the most impactful part of perspective I have on like life, and even my experience at school. So I feel like that was like the most uh fundamental learning experience, is being so far away from like the New York, the LA, like the cool crowds, and figuring out everything from magazines or TV shows or books, which is why whenever I ended up going to school, I didn't major in chemistry. What I ended up doing while I was at Vanderbilt was just choosing the classes that felt most right for the life I wanted to live and the job I wanted to have. And at the time, I really wanted to be a beauty brand founder or start a beauty company. So that
Wow.
meant MD, PhD, MBA, which is an intense amount of school, but it was like, that's what I needed to have. That's what, you do your chemical engineering PhD, you go dermatology MD, and then you go and get your MBA and learn about business. So I was taking all those different classes, trying to figure out, well, originally my thought was to do all three. As I got older to my junior and senior year, it became clear that really I needed to just pick one path and then do that. But that led to me having so many different experiences because, frankly, at the time, and still probably now, is that those fields don't overlap automatically. So I was having to create these new experiences. So I was working in a wet lab, if you will, like people who are like pipetting and like wearing
The
lab
lab
coats.
coats?
It's like true like developing and like synthesizing molecules. I was doing that, but at the same
Wow.
time I was like interning at like a creative consultancy and like taking classes about marketing and about women's health and history and about, business strategy. So it was very
What?
all at once. And at the time, no one got it. No one, I didn't even like know really what degree was going to be on my diploma until the very last minute because I was trying to piece together like which credits all fit towards the right major. Um,
Right.
but it really was like very much like real world oriented or interest oriented versus, I guess, what the academic plan should have been for most college students.
Wow. And it's crazy because to become a beauty founder nowadays, it's very rare that you find a beauty founder who actually has a cosmetic or a chemistry background. They literally just have belief to get started, belief in a
Yes.
problem that they want to solve to get started. And the fact that you were going to go this route where you were like, I need to know my research. It's giving true Sag energy. And I love that for you.
I mean, I will say I did have some really great professors and mentors who very truly, from my freshman year, were like, why are you doing this? Like, you don't need to have all of this. You don't need to have all of this. But when you hear about the stories that get pressed, which truly, like, when you're living in
Mhm.
rural Tennessee or the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, like I'm not walking into stores. I'm only seeing the brands that get pressed, and the brand stories that got pressed were dermatologist founded, celebrity founded, or these big things. So that's what I felt like was normal for a certain
Mhm.
company. I also was very, very, very aware as a Black woman that the world did not, like the business world did not look kindly to folks like me. So
Mm.
I wanted to be as qualified, as well researched, as knowledgeable as possible to be able to get what I wanted and needed. And it took all of these really great people who had way more experience in life and in academia and in business to be like, girl, stop. You know, like pick a lane. No one is doing this. Everyone is just like living on a dream and a prayer. Just go out into the world.
And I love that because it's kind of like sometimes you believe that you need to have all of this, all of these things that are on your list in order for you to get from point A to point Z. And sometimes you need those people around you to show you that there are shortcuts available. And if anything, do it smarter so that way you don't have to work harder.
Yes. The KISS method. Keep
The
it simple,
KISS
stupid.
method. What's the
That's what
KISS method?
keep it simple, stupid. That's what my
I
algebra
remember that. Keep
my
it
high
simple,
school.
stupid.
So yeah, so like why make this harder than it needs to be? Like why create challenges for yourself? So
Why? Why? Some people do love the challenge though, but if you know better, then why not do better? Can you share your experience? Because I find that your past experience somehow marries into what you're doing today. Can you share about your experience as president and editor in chief of Her Campus Vanderbilt and how those roles help shape your journey into entrepreneurship?
I mean, that's really a throwback because that was there's so much of um, my work experience that I definitely put on my LinkedIn, definitely talk about in interviews, definitely like put on my resume because they greatly inform the work I do now. But I was so young, like that the being able to be editor in chief and president of Her Campus came from the fact that I had a fashion blog that I started when I was a junior in high school, and
Wow.
I was reaching out to brands and I mean, I DM'd a brand or two, but this was like back when brands like didn't even have like it was like someone in the office like posting these really like lo-fi shots. It wasn't even like a real brand account. But I was like searching and finding emails and reaching out to them. And I didn't even get paid. Like I, when I would like free consult for them for free, or like do these brand collabs for free because I was too scared to let them know how young I was. Because I was under 18, I would have had to have like a parent signature on the contract. So I was like, oh, I don't have no rates. I'm just, I would love to just do this as like a pro bono, whatever. So I have been, in a sense, working from a very young age. So with Her Campus, it was while I was in school. And at the time, the Vanderbilt isn't one of those universities that I would say is, I don't know, it just didn't have like that fashion, beauty, like magazine loving crowd. I mean, probably it was there, but there were no communities built around it. There were no, like clubs really. So when I joined her campus as a freshman, I was probably the last year where there was like a real groundswell around it. So by the time I was my sophomore and junior year, um, that we just didn't have as much of a crowd like in the organization. We didn't really have any content to produce. There wasn't really anything happening. So I reached out to the national board or association. I'm not really sure exactly. I mean, I was again like 19 years old and said, can I get a semester, a couple of months to revamp, rebrand, just completely make it new to align it with what we're doing, like how we operate on campus and what we talk about and what we do and how we
Hmm.
engage with media. And I look back and think about how brave and how bold I was. I'm not sure I would like that. That's like, to be a 19-year-old and saying that, but they said yes. And I was on weekly calls with someone from their head office talking about the changes I was making and the different brand direction and growth strategy for getting new members and what will be the metrics for success and all of these things that I was using in my classes I was taking to inform what I was doing there, but also getting to work with real people in the real world who are running this larger organization in probably their New York headquarters, and implying that to what I was doing. And in that sense, it became like a real job, a real opportunity. And even the learnings from that I am currently using for a project I'm working on. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a thrown together experience, if you will. It was very like self-driven, but it replicated a lot of what my real life looks like now. I feel like I've been doing the same thing, just in different environments with different people, um, and different clients, essentially since I was 17.
And almost like different mediums almost, and so it's like it almost translates. I can relate to that so much because when I think about the things that I did when I was in high school, the things that I did, like I was writing college papers for people when I was in the 11th and 12th grade. um I've been copywriting. Well, technically it's, I guess it's, is it plagiarism? I don't know if that's plagiarism if you get someone to write your paper for you.
It,
I don't
I don't ask me.
I don't even remember if that's
I
considered
don't think I
plagiarism.
actually wrote a single paper in college. I was not one to do my homework, so I couldn't tell you.
I definitely wrote a couple of papers for people, and I used to design prom dresses for people. I
Wow.
would illustrate. People would come to me like, "Oh, Brittany, I need to figure out what my prom dress is going to look like," and I would illustrate dresses for people, and they would go get it sewn and like pattern made and whatnot. So it's just interesting to see, oh, the things that we did when we were in high school, the things that we did as children, they follow us into adulthood. Before founding McKetty, you served as an associate director at Style House. What were some of the key lessons you learned during your time there that you've applied to your own business ventures?
Oh, I mean, that's technically the only true like full-time job I've ever had. So everything.
Yes.
Um, so I made a conscious choice. I actually asked a couple of mentors in college and made a conscious choice, even still to this day, of working with smaller companies and being willing to sacrifice the big fancy name on my resume for working at companies that had three or four, five, maybe six employees, because you got to see everything happen.
Hmm.
So whenever I joined Style House, at the time I was hired, I believe there were three or four of us, but then the pandemic hit. And I was the only full-time employee on the team. So it's just me and the founder. So getting to not only work with a strategist hands-on and do every like it was we were doing everything together. There was a lot of what
Yeah.
she was involved in, I was CC'd on, or being a thought partner, co-creating, but also seeing how she evolved her business throughout the pandemic and what it looked like to integrate her angel investing, because she was an investor, and build that into our business model, or the specific passions and interests she had and integrate that into what we were doing. So a lot of that I've used for my own approach of how to run a business, how to pivot a business, how to integrate different things from investing to advising to just standard client retainer work. But that really, I think, is credit to just how small of an operation it was. And when you are really small but operate like one of the big guys, you can do really good work that other larger agencies can do. You get to see everything, like truly everything. And also, it was my first true experience seeing someone lead with their values. Like that was just part of the conversation, always with clients and companies. And that's something that I try to do better about now, because values are so important to me and how I work and what I do. So putting that in proposals, having that be part of my elevator pitch, having that be how I vet who I work with, when I work with them, how I work with them. Um, is truly from again that one full-time job I got out of college, ended up leaving to start my own consultancy at 23. So it was a little over 2 years, but it was incredible experience from account coordinator all the way to associate director. So yeah.
Wow. The fact that you've had one full-time job and that one full-time job was kind of like the springboard for you to start your own consulting agency. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what you do as a consultant and how you work with companies?
I also want to give a disclaimer. I would not necessarily recommend that. I would say I'm a special case. It was the right
She's
time,
like, would
right.
not recommend.
It was the right time, right place for me to leave and start my own. Also, like I said, I've been kind of consulting in one capacity or another since I was 17. I also went to school and like studied corporate strategy. So there's all of these, and I like so I would
So many
say,
nuances.
yeah, I was 23 technically, yes, but like I had been exposed to what having a consultancy would be for a while. There's that. And Amani Ellis, who is so incredibly smart and influential in my life, who is the founder of CultureCon. We went to the same university. She went to Vanderbilt as well. So she is someone who I reached out to a couple of times throughout my early years for advice. And she was the one, and she did this amazingly, which is like stay at your full-time job as long as possible. Like use it as a real world MBA. Don't leave, like use all the resources you can while you're there. And that's what she did. And she did it really well. And I tried that and eventually got to a point where I wasn't able to take on my own clients and own work because my full-time job was getting in the way. So that's really what it is. So again, it's not something I would be like take this bold move. It was really practical. So I would not necessarily recommend that for people at 23, 24. But what do I do now? I am a business strategist and strategic advisor. I specifically work with early stage founders and investors to bridge this knowledge, funding, and resource gap with highly qualified, smart, really, really innovative brands and businesses that are working at some sort of angle of impact or values-based business, and getting them to become household names. So whether that's fundraising, that's building their team, that's developing their go-to-market or growth strategy, but really supporting a lot of underrepresented founders, but even people who are just really building a business or brand for a better future with some sort of social impact in mind, and investors who want to fund those kind of businesses but may not have the resources or the knowledge base or even the infrastructure of how to assess or scale or figure out what impact should look like in a for-profit VC investor landscape. And there's no, I guess, let's say perfect. I work in the startup ecosystem, so I will also give credit where you're not always going to know everything. And the early days can be hard, but so much of what I do is taking an idea or a concept and figure out how to make it an actual business. Like you and I talk about this all the time, where
Mhm.
people say they have a business. What they really have is a brand, or what they really have is an idea that makes money. An idea that makes money is not a business. And
Mm.
me, right, like it's great if you come to me at the really early stages, like before you even have a logo, when it's just an idea. But actually, I think even at that early of a stage, conserve your resources. Don't hire me. There's so much information online. Podcasts like this one books, newsletters, learn all of that, figure out something and then just try it, see if it works, and then figure out what the business is from there. Because what your idea may be may not actually be what the business is meant to be, because maybe there's not a market for it yet. Maybe there's a reason why it doesn't exist. It's been tried and it's just not practical in the world that we live in. There's
Mhm.
that. But also having a great idea does not necessarily mean that you need to be a founder. I think that's a lot of the rhetoric that's happening right now.
Mm.
That's very founder forward, especially with the way the economy is, but especially with the stories and glamorization of being a founder. But you can be an entrepreneur and give really great ideas within the company you work for. I think this idea of ownership and having to own and have like full ownership over something is very Western. And not to say that
Mm.
like corporate America does not take advantage of that, but the idea that you have to own it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the one to launch it, found it, run it. Also, if you raise money, you're not really going to be the only owner anyway. Really great hobbies that can be small businesses and not startups. I think that there's a lot of single view of what building a business and how successful it should be or what numbers it should hit, but really just like test it out and see what feels right for you, because you may not want to run a $10 million business. Like it's nice to have $10 million, but it's not always nice to run a $10 million business.
So I want to speak about another role that you hold. As the executive director of Sad Girls Club, you focus on providing mental health resources for Gen Z and millennial women of color. What drew you to this organization, and how do you balance this role with your other entrepreneurial endeavors?
I will say I probably don't balance it well. I mean, it's all
Thanks for the honesty.
I think it's really important to be honest about that, because I think that it's not really a learning curve. I don't, what's the phrase for it? Like a transition period when you start something new where you add something to your plate. So I'm in the process of figuring out what balancing it all looks like. And I'm fortunate to have the flexibility where if I need to take a step back from my consultancy to focus more on Sad Girls Club for a couple of months, I can do that while I figure out like the balance. But the good thing, the benefit of being the executive director of Sad Girls Club is that I've worked with the org for a very long time. Even though I've been executive director now for what, 4 months, I was on the board before. I was consulting, with them for years. So it really is a transformation of the work I'm doing versus something entirely new. I can't remember exactly what attracted me to Sad Girls Club. I just know that like the feeling, like what I felt. Like I don't know like the specific signifiers of what they said or did, but 2020, so I was what? 22 at the time. Maybe I just turned 23. At least the founder of Sad Girls Club was looking to build her board for the first time. So I reached out to her because I was a member of the Wing. So she had posted it through like the Wing's like private
Oh, I
uh
remember the
networking.
wing.
Yeah. RIP. I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I don't think I'm quite ready to be a board member. I think I'm a bit too young and too inexperienced, but I would love to meet you and see how I can volunteer and help." She and I met, we had a great conversation. I think this was like February 2020, March 2020 rolled around. Things got a little wonky, but within a few months, I realized that I was underselling myself and that actually, like, I can join the board and be really helpful and really impactful. So on the board there and then eventually consulting with them, it was getting them from that first conversation with Elise where she's like, I just want to break even. Like I'm going out of pocket to hold these events so just get some fundraisers or some donations to I want to build a full team. Like I want to develop a revenue stream where I can actually, build a team so we can help millions of women, not just a couple hundred or a couple thousand over the past couple of years doing that. So I've already kind of learned the lay of the land and have already had great impact there of, leading like 90% of the partnerships and fundraising donations and revenue there. So this role is just more of like logistically figuring out, the extra stuff that we're doing now that we've grown. How do I balance all of that too? It's a balance, but I think that there's um so much of being a service provider that is fun and so much easier than being like a CPG founder or being a startup founder. I was actually just, like I said, listening to Cindy's episode this morning of the Not So CEO podcast, and she was talking about how her first business was so much easier to run because she didn't need to fundraise and because
Yes, she literally
um,
said that. She's like, raising capital is. It's not
Oh
as
yeah,
easy as you think.
exactly. And also like you can do it like solo versus if you have like certain kind of startups, like you just have to have like a tech co-founder or whatever. So like it's not, I wouldn't say it's hard. I don't consider my job hard and it is quite fun. But I have embraced the idea of seasons, and seasons not necessarily like quarterly or like with like the weather, but there may be a season like that week where I am incredibly busy and I get to give myself permission to drop a ball, drop several balls. And those balls would be my personal life, my family life, my, self-care, and I can drop that for a week. But what that week did for my business and for Sad Girls Club and for fulfilling like my self-actualization of like being an expert and strategist, that week doing that allowed me to have 3 weeks following where I could reprioritize my self-care, reprioritize my hobbies and my family and my friends, and then put business on the back burner or kind of balance it out. So things happen in like they ebb and flow, and you can also control for the most part the ebb and flow of that when you build really good systems, when you um, have a couple years experience, and when you kind of develop that skill set of being transparent about your capacity, about what's a priority for you, and being really honest with the people in your life, clients, friends, um, industry, kind of your network about what you do and don't have time for, or do or don't have the capacity for. So, you know.
Thank you so much for that. It's one of those things as to where like I remember at one point in time where I wanted to be busy. Like I wanted to have all the clients in the world. I wanted everything. And then I finally got it and I'm like, "Whoa, I'm overwhelmed." But then there's days when I wake up and I'm like, "I'm so grateful that I get to do this." It's like I don't have to do this. It's like I get to do this. So it's a reframing of perspective. But one of the most poignant things that you said was that there's seasons and you operate in seasons from time to time. There are going to be seasons where you have to go extra hard. And there's going to be seasons as to where you get to relax and you get to kick back and you get to reprioritize. I feel like I'm in my busy season right now where it's like get everything done, get as much done as you can because the reward, the payoff is going to be tremendous. But you just have to put in a little bit of effort right now to get to where you want to be so you can kind of glide by just for a few weeks or even a month even. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's going to be seasons for everything. Can you just maybe harp over like just the importance of entrepreneurs having a business strategy in order for them to either scale their business or grow their business?
I mean, it's how you make money. I know it's like it's how you make money. Like this is where I'm like, I'm going to rant because I'm like, do you want to make money? Yes. Do you want to make sure you're making money 5 years from now? And that's so much of business strategy is long-term thinking. It is understanding the why, because you also may really have right time, right place. But if you understand why it was the right time and why it was the right place, you can manufacture to some degree the right time and right place over and over again for yourself. And if you don't, then you're going to have a really good quarter, a really good month, a really good viral like 24 hours. But then when bills come due 6 months later or a year later, it's not going to pan out the same way. There's also a big part of growth and scaling. So I do work with like early stage when they're just starting out, but really my bread and butter is people who are already built something and are fundraising for the first time, or they're about to hit kind of a growth spurt, if you will, is that what you've always done is not necessarily what you need to do to get to where you're going. So figuring out and understanding what to keep from what you've been doing and what to let go of, how to evolve your current practices to the future, and really incorporate industry trends and insights, like what best practices are. That's what a business strategy is. It's like really truly understanding like the bigger picture of what makes a business get from point A to point B and then B to C in a way that, again, makes money.
I know that's right. That's why I call you Big Money Muna.
I mean, I think that's important. I think that there's so much, and I will never take for granted the opportunities I have to be in the investor or the funder space. I find that there are very few people who work equally or kind of try to keep their feet equally in both sides, with the founder, startup, business side and the funder, grant maker, investor side. Um, and how openly and honestly, the funder side and the investor side talks about money and a desire for money, and even impact investors who definitely invest with their values in mind, with impact in mind, with the world they want to see, but they're doing it because they want to make money. That is what investing is. And even if it's a secondary or tertiary factor, it is still a factor. It's a factor that's talked about and discussed over dinner, at coffee, via text. So I think it's really important that founders and startup founders and entrepreneurs who want to make money, who want to build generational wealth, because generational wealth is not 100K, it's not 200K, it's a lot of money to have generational wealth, and who want to fundraise at those 6, 7, 8 figure amounts, to really truly know that the purpose of what you're building, even if it has a greater thing, there has to be a component of it that is replicable from an economic standpoint, that it has to sustain itself in that way. And a business strategy will do that in a way that a brand strategy cannot.
Got it. My next question is what, just based on trends, you work with a lot of investors, so you're able to see from both ends of the spectrum what needs need to be met. Now, in regards to founders and entrepreneurs, what would you say investors are looking for when it comes to investing in small businesses and startups? What are some of the key things that they're looking for?
So I will say, so I'm gonna give some like caveats or nuances specifically of like the areas that I operate within. One, I operate at the very early stage, so pre-seed, like friends and family, pre-seed, seed, series A, and that's about it. Like series B, seed, they're investors and VCs at that stage. That just is a very different environment than what I operate in, and they also look for different things. I also work a lot in fashion, beauty, CPG, health, and tech as a secondary factor, but it's never like a Google, OpenAI. Like tech is never the primary function of the
Mhm.
company, and tech investors look for something very different than others. So I want to give that caveat to inform the things I'm about to say. Um, but one, investors really want to work with or invest in smart, capable people. And that means that you don't need to be smart and capable. You need to show that you're smart and capable. And that is the thing that where people miss. Where people who I can see are very smart and so well versed in whatever they're building, but they need to be able to translate that to an audience that may not understand it off the bat. So they're looking for people who can really showcase um, their skill set and their industry knowledge or expertise in whatever area they're building. Traction. I know like every founder hates to hear that, especially right now, but investor trends do exist. And so many founders that are currently fundraising in the year 2024 are using brands that fundraised in 2020 and 2021 as examples. They're using topicals, they're using Ami Collet, they're using 13 Loon as examples, but that environment was very different where you could
Mm.
fundraise on an idea. Now you have to show when you're talking to investors that this actually is profitable. It can make money. You can acquire customers for an affordable, low to no cost. And you actually have the ability to run this business if I don't give you money. Like they want the
Mm.
investment to be a bonus, even though just practically that's like not truly how startups work. And they know that, but they want to see some level of ability to like make it work even just a little bit without cash versus in 2020 and 2022, in 2021 when you don't have to prove any of that. Lastly, that you are well connected. And that is what I would say an implicit part of fundraising, where warm intros will always be a million. And I mean that literally like that magnitude of difference of more valuable than a cold intro. So if you are happen to get in a meeting with one investor, they want to know that you know other people, other investors that you are going to be able to, talk to, connect with. They will introduce you to, if they put money in, they'll introduce you to their peers. But a cold email, especially to every investor you talk to, I think shows that you may not have those relationships. So building those relationships is important. They want to know that you came to them early before you needed the money and you get to actually know each other as humans. They want to know who else you're talking to. They want to know who else has, signed on or is diligencing. That actually is a valuable asset. So always, if you think you're going to fundraise in the next 18 months, even the next 12 months, starting those conversations now, because by the time you actually ask them for money, being well connected or having that community already built, so much of it is FOMO. So them knowing that you already are talking to people and that you already have interest, that's going to probably do more for your fundraise than anything else.
Question: what do you feel are some important things to include in a business plan for someone who is starting a business, maybe for the first time, or someone who's still in the early stages? What do you feel like are some uh, important indicators that need to be in a business plan to help someone establish their business model?
So, well, I guess I'm going to start off to not sound repetitive. Whenever I work with people on their business strategy, which looks like a business plan, whenever I create it with clients, it just is more actionable and a bit more fit to their
Business
need.
strategy is more actionable.
Yes. And when I
Got it.
create, it's like, okay, well, you want to build this, but you're okay with building it over 2 years. You don't need it to be, huge in 6 months. So that's going to impact what we create. Also, you want to eventually outsource this versus that. So that's a little bit different. So, but that's still a business plan in a lot of ways. So in that kind of business plan, one thing that I always try to include is a what are you and what are you not? So,
Mm.
we are a digital platform. We are not an IRL community. That's really like that's a false dichotomy. Most brands do both, but knowing at least the first stage what you're trying to build, it helps you create that vetting in your mind where someone reaches out to you to do an in-person event, but you are hyper focused in year one on building your online presence, then you should focus on that because you're going to get all these different things and you want to spend your time, which is already very limited, on what you're trying to build for in phase one. Or, you are women focused, but you're not exclusive. So this idea of creating inclusive that anyone can, value it, but it's meant for women, right? So like figuring out that what you are and what you're not really helps in all these different things of just figuring out what to do and what not to do. But truly to build the business model is the question I always write in big letters whenever I'm doing a discovery call. There's always a point in the conversation where I think to myself, what do they sell? And if I've talked to you for more than 5 minutes and I don't know what you're actually selling, that's a problem. So when you figure out what you are and what you're not, which is usually like values driven, passion driven, what kind of company you personally want to build, then identify what do you sell and your business model will be based on that. And to give an example, because when people think, well, I know what I'm selling, you just didn't get it. Instagram is a great example. If you were thinking about Instagram as a business, people would say it's a social media platform. But if you think about what does Instagram sell, it sells data. There's a data collection and distribution. That's what it is. So their business model should be based on the fact that they are a data collection platform. If it was based on them being a social media platform, we would all be paying a monthly fee to use Instagram. We don't. Their business model is based on the fact that they are a data company. They sell data, and that's to advertisers. So
And
knowing,
ad placement at this point, ad placement and
yeah,
and for
no,
us to be seen
yeah,
by 90% of our followers.
that's true. So that's yes, and that's going even deeper into that example.
Yeah,
Phase one of Instagram was data. Phase two was ad placement, but ad placement is actually still data because a lot of things sell ad placement.
true.
I can sell ad placement on my website. It doesn't mean anything. What made Instagram's ad placements so valuable and Facebook/Meta writ large was the fact that they had the data to target your audience. That is the
That
reason
makes absolutely.
Instagram and Facebook got to where they are, is because the data could inform. And that's what they've never even revealed to even the people who are spending ad dollars with them. They don't reveal how they target those because that's their bread and butter. That's what makes the magic. That's why in 2017, 2016, people could launch a company and sell out in 24 hours because of that's how good their targeting data was. So knowing what you sell gives you the money-making engine, which is different than the brand part, which is what is your company, right? And you think if you think about those different things, there's so many examples I can go into, a million and one of them. But thinking about what you sell, like as a business owner, versus what your maybe what your customer buys or what your consumer, which is also the difference between a consumer and a customer, what they are engaging with can and maybe even should be different in order for you to be profitable and scale to the size that you want.
What would you say is the difference between a consumer versus a customer?
The customer is the person who purchases your product. The consumer is the person who uses, or I shouldn't say person, the entity. A customer purchases, a consumer uses. So the
Mm.
best way to like the back in the day, I guess the biggest difference there was with retailers. So if you, I have an iPhone and I use AT&T. I have always bought my iPhones from AT&T whenever I get a new plan. I do not go to an Apple store, which means I am actually not an iPhone customer. I am an iPhone consumer. I use it,
Mm.
but I'm an AT&T customer. So in that sense, differentiating between your customer and consumer, we are all Instagram's target consumer, but I have never purchased ad space, so I'm not their customer. I don't spend money with Instagram. That's also really good if you have a brand that targets a customer that is buying for the consumer. So if you have toys, parents buy toys for their children. They are the customer. So if you see ads, if you like watch those like Nickelodeon ads, that you can tell which ones are like what parts of it are targeted towards the consumer to make it fun versus the customer to make it affordable. Jewelry brands that advertise for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, the people who will be wearing it are not the people who are purchasing it. So it's just this delineation between who you're targeting and when and why you target them.
You work really closely with female and BIPOC founded startups. What unique challenges do these founders face, and what strategies have you found the most effective in overcoming these obstacles?
One of the big challenges I would say is respect. And I
Mm.
think it's so much of what um, sexism and racism and xenophobia shows up in the investor startup ecosystem. It's a lack of respect. And to me, lack of respect looks like lack of trust, needing to over verify very easily verifiable information. It is not allowing mediocrity or imperfection, not viewing them as humans with feelings and founders who have put in work and effort. Um, and the strategies for dealing with it, which are not the strategies necessarily that one wants to hear, but in like a broad sense, right? Like individually, I work with strategies for founders, especially ones who are, I mean, fundraising is a big one where you really need to figure out like how to overcome the biases of being a woman or being a person of color. But overall, that's truly a strategy is like community care and having people around you who are supportive and remind you of who you are and really breaking down the imposter syndrome. Like you being a marginalized founder, fundraising with imposter syndrome is like tying your legs together and putting one leg behind your back. And like it's so incredibly difficult. So you need people who will really gas you up at every stage. That's
Mm.
one. Two is bringing in experts, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. But I also like give so much free advice. Like I'm not precious with my ideas or my strategies. I'm in the DMs constantly voice noting people and sending them things.
You are
I,
always helping.
I like I literally
That's
will
how you
have
know you love what you do.
and they'll be like, oh, I'm meeting with an investor in an hour, and like I'm nervous about this one thing, and I'm like, oh, well, make sure you bring up this or that. And I even price the majority of my services in a way that's really, really easy and simple that, you don't have to spend $10,000, which I have been in many scenarios where I'm like, I'm not going to work on this for less than this amount of money. But really, if you just have $500, you're like, I am going to, meet with an investor, or I need to launch this new product, or I, you know, am going to be talking to the press, and I need to make sure that I show up in a way that really speaks to the company I'm building, the work I'm doing, the product I'm launching, and not to the biases that people who are looking at me will think and feel. Book a session. We'll spend an hour and a half developing all these custom, things that make you feel good because as you know, and I know as Black women, that what makes me feel valued and respected, what builds trust, what builds community with people who don't look like me may not be the same as you. It may not be the same as everyone else. And so the best you can do is having a community of strategic advisors, friends. Again, a therapist is really valuable, who can help you talk through that and develop, individualized strategies. Um, but I mean, it's hard. It's a hard world out there. Um, Also, I would be remiss to mention the fact that like I go back and forth with this. I don't think I'll ever come to a definite conclusion, but there is a way to build a world where you do not need the approval or the cosign of people who don't value and respect you.
Mm.
And there are a lot of gatekeepers and a lot of important and powerful people in the startup ecosystem. Are older white men, sure, but one of the most impactful and like perspective shifting projects I've ever worked on was while I was at Style House, and how I got my first advisory position at Garden Society, which is a women founded startup that was trying to raise money from men, and they were being disrespected and the value of what they were bringing to the table wasn't seen. So they decided, you know what, let's take a step back and let's literally do an exclusive women investor fundraise.
Mm.
Getting to work with them and see what it looked like to do their Series A, where my specific role was working on SPV, which is we're going to like really granular investor things, but kind of like a subcategory of your investment round, where I want to say it was what, 30 plus women investors, 30% of which were women of color. And I'm not going to say it was easy, but 6 months prior, a year prior, that version of myself would not have thought it possible. That if a company wanted to raise that much money, because I think their Series A was 7 million, um, they would need the approval of all the sorts of people who don't value and respect what they're doing, what I do, the POV that we bring to the table, and it wasn't needed. And that spoke to testament of like how great they are at what they do, the product that they have that was incredible, and the ability to think outside the box and be strategic about what do you need to feel respected. And it's like, actually get rid of the people who don't respect you and just go for the people who
Mm.
do. And they just might be harder to find, might take longer, might give on average less money per person, but you can get a larger group of them together, all these different things versus, deal with the challenges that traditional, VCs may give.
Muna, that was again like snaps in a circle for you. Can you give any entrepreneurs or founders out there any tips on how they should go about fundraising, especially if this is maybe their first time?
Tips. Oh, I'm good. So I'm gonna actually, I keep bringing up Cindy because her episode was so good. I'm going to probably repeat a lot of the things that she said, but it's because they're true. And this is not even to be self-promotional. Like, having advisors is incredibly important and helpful. It doesn't have to be me. Like, I love, like, truly, it's like I get excited to do it every single day. I love it when it's in the DMs, over email, via Zoom, advising really smart people doing incredibly smart things and helping them get money to do that. But even if it's not me, find someone who was in the space, who knows the best practices, who has relationships with investors, who knows what you should be doing, what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and help you through that. That is number one. And it doesn't even have to be a traditional strategic advisory relationship. It can be commenting on, there's a lot of smart business people who have relatively small followings. And if you comment on their posts and ask questions, like direct, easy to respond to, like not full paragraph personalized responses, but just curiosity questions, then you can get some advice and strategic advisory that way from just influencers and content creators that you like and respect. So that's one. Secondly, is tell people you are fundraising. That's the like fight I get in with a lot of my clients who they underestimate how many investors or could be investors are already in their network. Send out an email saying, hey, I'm fundraising, and send it to your close family and friends. You'd be surprised who would give you money. Bring it up when you're going on coffee chats, reach out to people, DM on Instagram, DM on LinkedIn, letting the people you know that that you want to build this thing in this way, and ask them for 15 minutes of your time to pitch them and ask for an intro or ask if they know anyone or get their take on it. That if it's your first time fundraising, I will say the success of that is not that you get a bunch of money because you probably won't, especially if you're just starting out. The success metric is you getting more comfortable, getting more clarity, and also building a network. That
Mm.
will get you to the big money that you really want.
I love that. How necessary is a pitch deck? I don't even know if people do this anymore.
Very,
How essential is it?
very,
Is it's
very.
essential. What do you feel like is the most important things to be inside of that deck?
Most important things. How you make money. Like I just I
It's how, listen, she's like, it's how you make money. It's all about the money.
it's and like that's what investing is. That's what fundraising is. That's what like late stage capitalism is not great for society. But we are operating you're building a business in this environment. You like for profits. Social enterprises are um kind of a in between, I would say. And nonprofits, I think that a lot of people opt out of a proper business strategy by going nonprofit route, thinking that they don't need a business strategy. You still need one for nonprofits. You still need to make money. Um, but at the end of the day, if you're a for-profit and you're fundraising, money matters. In fact, it's probably the most important thing of what you're doing. So knowing how you make money, what do you sell? And talking about that, that is going to be what any investor is looking for. And pitch decks are essential. And if you don't put that in your pitch deck, you will either not get a second meeting. And if you're lucky enough to get a second meeting, they'll ask it to you in the meeting. So you still have to know, like, how do you make money? And how much money do you plan on making? Because a lot
Mm.
of people want VC investor money, and the money that they want to make is not VC money. And that's also a hard thing to have because, talking to a friend, slash not client, but someone who would be happy to advise who wants to build a $10 million business. Incredible, not VC backable. They need
Mm.
100 million plus to make it even worth the conversation. Um,
Mm.
so knowing what you sell and how you make money even determines if investors are even the right fit for you.
Right, because so there's essentially a difference between a VC, an angel investor versus are there like different levels when it comes to investing as to where someone who just needs $10 million, a VC might look at that and be like, it's a waste of my time versus
They
someone.
won't even respond to your email.
Mm,
If you say that you not only will they not respond to the email, they will think that you don't know what you're doing. If you say my goal is to make $10 million on this idea and you are approaching a VC, you like they write $10 million checks. Like that is so that's yeah. So there are levels to it, and the definitions and the specifics can be murky. That what is most important is to understand the approach, I would say, and how early they invest. So angel investors usually write smaller checks than VCs, and they're individual people versus venture capital firms, which is pooled money from different people. The VC approach is usually kind of spread it wide, like invest in all these different things, and one of them will make it big and that will pay for all the others. Angel investing is because it's smaller checks and it's also much earlier in the process, there's a lot more nuance and each angel investor kind of evaluates a deal differently, but they would probably be less, they have to be kind of, it's high risk. They're kind of okay with loss, but they're not going to say I invested in 20 companies, only one succeeded. So yay, I'm really happy with what I did. That wouldn't be a great move versus a VC. In theory, if that one is big enough, there's nothing to even reevaluate. They think they did a good job. There's also different avenues of funding that I think should still be considered in this conversation. So there's grants, there's loans. There's also some interesting grants that actually take equity. I think Black Ambition Prize, that's founded by Pharrell, what they are building is so incredible, but they actually do take equity. So it's a grant, but it's also an investment. There's all these different like kind of models. There's nothing really cut and dry these days. There's also syndicates, as I mentioned before, where it's like a VC firm, but it's specifically for angels. So a bunch of angels come together and pool their money. But by and large, investors want a return. And the riskier the investment, the better the reward typically is intended to be. And startup investing is high risk. So if someone gives you $1,000 or $10,000, what amount of money would be able to get them back 10,000 or 100,000? And usually $10 million, especially if you want to pocket $10 million, is not going to give enough of a return for a VC.
Because these people, they want their money back tenfold.
Do. They do. They do. And they also want it back in a specific time horizon. That's another big difference with angel investing and
Mm.
VC. So angel investing, one, because it's earlier for the most part. There's some early stage VCs, but VCs operate at like again, beyond where I typically operate, Series A, B, C,
Mhm.
D, all of that. So if you invest earlier, your time horizon already is a bit longer because you're coming in a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But also it's a reflection of how fast they expect you to grow. VCs have pretty clear, it's different per firm, or it varies per firm, but they are very clear about what they expect you to hit at different times. And an angel investor can say, I will put in money now and I hope that you exit in 10 years. That's my goal, that you exit in 10 years. A VC can say this is a 3-month or 3-year turnaround. And if you don't hit this metric at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, then they'll push you out. They'll get a group of other investors to buy out your stake or replace you or what have you. They will stop giving you resources that you need to grow. So therefore,
Mm.
you're kind of dead in the water anyway. They won't reinvest. A lot of investors invest in future rounds. They're not going to keep doing that. It's high stress. And you're also selling your company to them. That's what investment is. So
Yeah.
they're your co-owners. And if you're not aligned with ideal outcomes with your co-owner,
Drama.
and that's a risk that a lot of Black founders specifically face. I
Mm.
saw a stat recently of the frequency of Black founders being pushed out of their business by investors
What?
is so much larger than their peers. So being aligned on where you are, where you're headed, and how you get there, essential.
Do you have any advice for founders and entrepreneurs who maybe just want to go the safe route and go with grants instead? But grants, again, are kind of like far and few. And it's more about opportunity, finding out about grants, grant writing, and being able to send in the information, meeting their requirements. Do you have any guidance, any insights for founders who are looking to maybe acquire grant money instead?
Also, I will say grants aren't necessarily safer. I wouldn't consider it's just different, just a different thing for different kind of business, different kind of person. Grants, I will say the specific grants that I've done like I've reviewed applications and things, but they actually happen to align a lot with like the business world. So like what makes for a good investor pitch actually can make for a really good grant pitch too.
Mm.
So it actually puts a little bit more power and onus on the founder, I think. Like if you have a really good business model and pitch and everything that your business is actually very investable, but you just don't want to scale it to 100 million or you don't want to have to sell a portion of it, you can actually go to grants and still be really successful. In fact, a lot of the founders that you see who are winning every grant competition ever, because there's sometimes just a couple brands that really, blow it out of
Yeah.
the water. Um,
We see some of the same brands. Yeah.
um, they usually have a great pitch for all sorts of funders. But something that I would recommend is spending time learning about the grant to see what they're looking for. So whenever I work with clients on their grant applications or advise them on kind of pitching or building their business strategy for a grant, we take a look, even if it's just the homepage or the past recipients, to see that they're looking for something that's really small. Like I've had clients that were rejected because they were too big. And to us, we're so small, but we're too big. Others, on the other hand, they want someone that's big enough where they can trust that they'll get very big in the future. There are some that really want to be founder forward, that they want you to be doing press and they want you to be, on their homepage. They want you to be on their social. So they're going to care about your founder story and the social presence that you have as a founder. Some are really product driven, that they want to have your product on their shelves, or they want to be backing the most innovative technology or what have you. So being able to focus on the product that you're building will be important for your application. So essentially learning or kind of reading between the lines, which isn't always easy. It's something I just happen to be really good at, of like being able to get data and then extrapolate second or third level implications. But that's, I think, the best tool you can use for customizing your different grant applications, is understanding like what that specific grant is looking for or what they care about, and then infusing that in your application.
Another route, I guess, would be brand partnerships, essentially, as to where you're throwing an event or it could be something virtual. Would you recommend brands go for more brand partnerships, or founders go for more brand partnerships, especially if they are aligned? Because sometimes they're not aligned. And if so, how should they go about approaching other brands for partnerships?
So, yes. So, brand partnerships, the landscape is changing, but it is very lucrative. It's just now it's more spread out. So, back in the day, it was only a handful of companies or brands that would get those partnerships. Those partnerships had a lot of zeros on them. Now you get fewer zeros per partnership, but they're now partnering with lots of different brands. I do recommend them. Though, what's important to realize, and I'm glad that you asked the question in this way at this time, because I think that with the way you asked it is how a lot of companies are thinking about it, a lot of founders are thinking about it, which is as a funding stream when it's really a revenue stream. So
Yeah,
in that situation, what do you sell? If you're doing brand partnerships, you're selling access to your community. You're selling ad space. You're selling,
right.
actually not a funding vehicle in the sense of like taking capital, and investors want return on their investment. Loans want your interest paid. Grants tend to be pretty just like, we want to do good. Revenue stream, though, that's a bit different. So brand partnerships is a really, really good revenue stream. It's also one that doesn't dilute other revenue streams. So no matter what company or brand you're building, you can still kind of do brand partnerships, and it won't, there's no like cannibalism or competition with your own existing offerings or products. So I would recommend it. And as someone who is receives a lot of pitches for brand partnerships and also pitches out, so I've been on both sides of it. No matter how much you think you're covering up your self-centeredness, someone who was typically good at their job, and people who are good at their job usually have higher budgets to distribute, they can see that. So it's really important that whenever you are pitching or having a conversation, that you either already assess or you outright ask, what do they want or need from the partnership? Because
Mm.
people, I would say 85% of the pitches I get for Sad Girls Club, for other companies or clients I work with, is, here's what this is why we would love to work with you. This is why we're such a good fit. This is why I'm like, okay, sure. I'm glad that you thought about that. I can determine if it's a good fit though within 5 seconds. And so you don't need to like convince me of that. Also, I can tell that you care. It takes one sentence to let me know that you actually care about what we do. And if you don't care, I can figure that out pretty quickly on the call. What I want to know is how this partnership is going to help me or us. I see how it'll help you, but what do we gain from it? Do we gain money, which chances are, if it's a revenue stream for you, you want us to give you money. If we are getting if we're getting access to your community, what did your community offer us? Are they going to buy our products? Are they going to come to our events? Like, what is it to them? When you figure that out, you can pitch so much better, because then you're actually providing a value that you're selling versus asking for money as if it's a grant or as if they're a funder, because it really is, what you're doing is you're selling something.
Muna, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm pretty sure there were so many gems dropped. Like, I don't think there's a time when you speak where a gem doesn't fall out your mouth. So just letting you know that. Secondly, is there anything that you're currently working on as to where myself and our Not So CEO community can support you? Any business endeavors? How can we support what you're doing and to further, push your mission?
Well, I appreciate you asking. There's probably three main ways, all quite different. One, this is not really work, but if you are learning French, if you speak French and you are in New York and you want to come hang out and practice together, um, come and join us. The link is in my Instagram bio.
Yes.
That's
I'm gonna make
100.
sure to include the link in for the episode so that way we can get
Yes,
people to sign up. We need more people to come to the French conversation. It's
I
fun.
so fun. And it's something that makes my work easier and more fun because when you have really robust non-work life, your work life becomes that much easier to handle. So it's so fun. It's so incredible. Everyone there is so cool. Like it feels so like the energy is always amazing. So that's number one. Two, if you are a startup founder or if you are an investor or accredited investor and want to start investing and you haven't, or you want to pivot your investing to be a bit more impact driven, you can go to my personal website and book a strategy session or reach out if you want to do a full strategic plan. Strategy sessions are kind of a one time, or we can do them recurring, but it's kind of encapsulated into its own like 90 minutes to like solve a problem and build out a strategy for a thing versus strategic planning is like the whole shebang. But I am always so honored and blessed and appreciative of all the cool people I get to work with and all the smart founders and investors. So that's always a way that we can connect and really, build a company that gets you that shmoney.
That's shmoney Muna. I told
And
ya.
and but I mean, it's fun to have money. Let's be real. All of our little parachutes we're talking about, like that's and if you want that and you need that and you want to do it in a way that feels ethical and aligned with who you are and isn't selling your soul and isn't, throwing people under the bus and is also like built for to last, then like let's talk about it. Let's build it. Let's create some really unique and aligned strategies there. And then lastly, on LinkedIn, I'm challenging myself to share more insights and thoughts, even things like this podcast where like so many of the things I talk about and say like should be and will always be free. Like this is not like what people pay me for is the customization. I will tell you my thoughts, what to think about, considerations to have, and then you can hire me for us to like really hone in on what that means for you and how you leverage that for your business. But the high level like gems that kind of just like drop or fall out or whatever, you can follow me on LinkedIn and see those there. Feel free to comment and share, and we can have some lively discussions on LinkedIn about all the things that you need for your business strategy.
Muna, and can you please let our listeners know exactly where they can find you on social media, your website, so that way they can start hitting you up?
So my name is incorporated into everything, but I do have a bit of a complicated name. So my Instagram is Muna Ikedionwu, just first name, last name. My website is M Ikedionwu, so my first initial and my last name. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Muna Ikedionwu. So if you kind of look at the name of this episode or in the bio or description, copy and paste that, and you'll be able to find me on Instagram, online, and our great friend LinkedIn that's becoming the new go-to social platform.
Right, right. I will be sure to link all of your handles and your LinkedIn name in the episode description. That way, you guys can hit Muna up. You guys can talk with her, follow her journey, her style, her trips to Paris, and for you guys to be able to hopefully join the French conversation soon. I haven't been in a while. It's been like a couple of months since I've been. I need to come
No
back.
pressure, no pressure,
And
because
it's a
also
no pressure environment.
I,
That's one of the best things about it, especially when you bring donuts.
yeah, donuts,
Muna is going to bring cloudy donuts from time to time. I'm just saying, you
yes,
will eat more than one.
donuts and champagne at 11 a.m. on a Saturday is the best environment to be speaking French with fellow women of color.
It is the best time. Muna, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful. I just cannot wait to continue seeing you shine. We know that brand strategy is essential, but having a business strategy, I mean, you might not have the funds at the moment to work with an advisor or but it's something to think about. And as Muna says, how are you going to make this money? You have to make this money. Okay?
Yeah,
We were not going into business to be broke.
No, no. I mean, you will be broke at first, probably, but the end is not that. It's not that. Exactly.
It is not that. Well, thank you everyone for listening and for tuning in. Muna, thank you so much for your time. Guys, please follow Muna and stay updated on all of the amazing things she does. And until next time, my friends, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Not So CEO Talk Show. If you love what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. To stay in the loop, stack our newsletter, The Paper, and follow us on social media at Not So CEO. In case you need assistance with building your brand or you're a creative wanting to go from freelancer to founder, book an office hour session with me on our website at notsoceo.co. Until next time, remember, being self-made shouldn't compromise self-care. This is Not So CEO, signing off.